So, hi everyone. My name is Carson King. I'm an accidental fundraiser. I'll do a Q&A session at the end. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that that pop up when we're talking, just throw them in the chat or in the Q&A thing. We'll get
Apologize.
to them here in a
I
little
can.
bit. So basically what happened was last year, September 14th, was the game day for Iowa State game. It was the first time being in Ames. So that was a huge thing for me and my friends because as an Iowa State fan, I never thought we'd see football game day in Ames at any point. So that was really cool. So we decided we were going to go to the game. We uh, we got up at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. to get there, and we wanted to get there early so we could be by the stage and see the game day crew and all that fun stuff. But the night before, my friends and I, they're like, "Hey, are we gonna do any signs or anything like that?" All of them bailed on it, and I was like, "No, I think it might be kind of funny." So I got to thinking what would be kind of worthwhile, what might get a couple laughs or anything like that, and I decided I'd ask for my Bush Light supply to be replenished and throw my Venmo account on there. Like, if all goes well, someone behind me sees it and sends $20, and then that covers our drinks for the afternoon. And so I went into Walmart at like 10 o'clock the night before, and I got a $1.19 poster board and brought it back home. I had a Sharpie already, so I was really excited. I got to save money on that. And I started tracing out Bush Light Supply needs replenished, Venmo, Carson King, Carson-King-25. And about halfway through, I just gave up. I was like, no one's going to see it, so it doesn't matter. So I just, with my terrible third grade handwriting, scribbled on there. And we went to the game and we got there and it was just packed. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of Iowa and Iowa State fans there. Obviously this was a really big deal for the Cyhawk rivalry. I mean, it's the biggest game in our state, and it's one of the most watched things in our state that we ever have. And it was just packed. We got there probably around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and we couldn't be anywhere near by the game day stage. It was shoulder to shoulder. They were already cutting it off, and people were filling up like the extra courtyard in the area. So we looked over and we saw this little circle stage in the corner. And we thought, oh, well, maybe we might get to see David or Maria do an interview here in person. So we stood by there. Plus, we could set our beverages down on the stage and kind of lean against it. We didn't have to be standing the whole time. It's a long time to stand when you're tailgating. So we stood there, and then pretty soon more and more people came in. About an hour later, game day started. And it was just shoulder to shoulder. There was people all around us. Even we were pretty far away from the main stage. People with signs everywhere. And then I had this, little 3 foot by 3 foot dinky sign that I didn't put any effort into. And there were people with like these immaculate cutouts, and it was really sweet. And all of a sudden we looked up and we saw the security guys coming to the stage and the camera crew. And then we're like, oh man, what's happening? And then here comes the entire game day crew, and they came to the stage. Um, and Lee Corso and Kirk Herbstreit, all of them, they're right there. Kirk Herbstreit was standing right in front of me, like he came through, and they shook everyone's hands that was next to the stage. He was in this bright red blazer, and he was right here. It was so cool. And they actually saw my sign and they kind of laughed. I'm like, that's pretty funny. And so I just held up my stupid little sign. And then about 15 minutes later, my friend Tyler looks at me and he goes, hey, who keeps blowing up your phone? He's like, your text messages are just going off the hook right now. So I looked down and it wasn't text. It was my Venmo notifications. And for those of you guys that don't know, Venmo is like a cash transaction app. It's like a online banking app where you can swap cash back and forth. Um, had about $400 in there within 15 minutes from being on national television, and we thought this was so much fun. I mean, everyone around us heard about what was going on, and we thought, wow, this is going to be a fantastic night on Welch. um, so we decided that this is going to be really fun. We'll keep everyone up to date, and then pretty soon, just money just kept coming in and kept coming in, and we hit $600, and I was like, I mean, there's a better cause than my own good night out on the town with my buddies. So $600, like that could pay for a couple gas cards or a couple hotel rooms for the night for some families or something. I wanted to send it to charity, but I didn't know where exactly yet. So we just kind of kept enjoying game day. And once it was all over, we went back to our tailgate. And I called my parents, my brother, and my sister, and kind of told them about what was going on and what I wanted to do. And we all decided it'd be a great idea to send to the University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital. And being an Iowa State guy, I thought that was the coolest thing ever because Iowa State fan, Iowa is in Ames for game day. It's our biggest rivalry, 364 days a year. You're best friends with everyone, but on that Saturday, you can't stand your best friends because they're Hawk fans or they're Cyclone fans. And the Stead Family Children's Hospital, if you guys don't know what the Wave is, Kinnick Stadium is right next to the Stead Family Children's Hospital. So every game day at home, at the end of the first quarter, everyone in the entire stadium turns and they wave to the kids in the hospital. And it's really sweet. It's this really, really cool experience being for just a couple minutes. Those kids, like they're not worried about what's going on. They're not worried about them being sick. Their parents aren't worried about it for that couple minutes. It's just the communities from all over the country coming together and just rooting for them, basically. So we decided we were going to send it there. And at that point, it was about $1,600 were in my Venmo account, which, my friends were still to this day, they're like, you could have paid off your student loans, all that fun stuff. Well, we'll get into that later. So I think it was the following Sunday, I got my first phone call. People had seen it on social media. They wanted to do my first radio interview, which is really cool. I was like, I didn't think I'd get on radio for this. It's kind of fun. So I did a local radio station at like 5 a.m. that Sunday. And I don't know who was listening, but immediately after that aired, I had requests from all over the country to do radio interviews. I had requests from Anchorage, Alaska, Chicago, Orlando, New York, San Diego. I had a couple of phone calls from Australia, which was just, that's crazy. It was really cool. And then I had some TV interviews come up, and all these cool different things started happening. More and more people got word of it. There were some ESPN reporters that started sharing the story. Scott Van Pelt did a story on it. It was really sweet. Who would have thunk, my stupid little sign was getting national attention for, and raising funds to help kids with cancer and, premature babies. Like that's really cool. Then I got a call, I think it was on Thursday afternoon, the week after. And it was from Good Morning America. And I'm like, hey, Carson, how would you feel about coming to New York for a little bit and doing an interview with us on Good Morning America? I was like, that sounds awesome. I'd love to. I'm like, okay, your flight leaves in 4 hours. And I said, I'm going to call into work. So I called into work and I told them what was going on, and they were so supportive. I worked at Prairie Meadows at the time. I'm still part-time there. And they were really good about covering my time off because this was a lot of time off I was taking to, fly to New York in the middle of our racing season. It was pretty taxing on them. And I brought my parents with me because they'd never been to New York before. And like any rational 24-year-old, who wouldn't want their parents with them in New York, right? I don't know what I was thinking. But they came with me, and we got to do a whole bunch of different stuff. And then on the flight out there, I think we were in Detroit for our layover. And I got a call from CNN and Fox and Friends and ABC and NBC, and they're like, "Hey, we heard you're going to be in New York. Do you want to come on our TV shows?" I was like, "Sure, I guess." I'd never done a TV interview before, but this works. And we got to New York, and I got to hang out with some of the guys from Anheuser-Busch. And right before we got to New York, we got a call to check my Twitter account. And I looked at Twitter, and both Bush and Venmo had pledged to match whatever total donations raised in my Venmo account are by the end of the month and send it to the hospital. So if someone sends $5, it's tripled into, 15. And it's going to be kind of big, I'm thinking. By the time we got to New York, I think we were at around 300,000 total, which was really cool. Maybe a little more than that. It might have been around 600,000 total. Which it's to be able to think about that and say, hey, that's a little amount, $300,000. That's small. That's still unreal. So we got to Good Morning America. We got to the studio at like 5 a.m. and I was backstage, and I didn't realize how many people are in the Good Morning America studios. There's like 200 people in there. And, they're all super excited and happy. And I'm like, it's way too early for you guys to be this hyper. And I was horrified because I just realized this is live, and I'd never done live TV interview before. I'd never done live radio interviews before. Everything been pre-recorded. So my first time being on national television live was in front of, 8 million people watching Good Morning America. I was like, this is going to be horrible. I'm going to drop an F-bomb or something, I'm going to mess up. And then I was back there shaking. And then all of a sudden, Michael Strahan, he comes walking backstage and he stops and looks at me and goes, Carson King. And I just giggled. I didn't really know what else to do. And he's like, don't worry about the cameras. He's like, it's just you and me talking. We're going to have a great time. He's like, just, obviously passionate about it. Just talk. He's like, just you and me having a conversation. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This might be okay. So I go out there and we're talking, and Michael Strahan actually messes up the pronunciation of the Stead Family Children's Hospital. He said Steed. And I had an immediate, like, in my mind, I was like, well, I need to say something, but I don't want to like correct him on TV. Like, I don't know the etiquette here. So when it was my turn to talk again, I just said, yeah, the Stead Family Children's Hospital. And like kind of worked that in. And they played a video that a bunch of the kids and family recorded at the hospital. And I almost started crying on national television, which was really cool. So, that whole experience was unreal. I got to do Good Morning America, Fox and Friends, CNN, ABC, NBC, ESPN, all kinds of different things out there. I got to meet the marketing team for Anheuser-Busch, for Busch Light, and all that cool stuff. It was really fun. And then we did do a little sightseeing. We got to take a double-decker bus tour of New York, which was really neat. I mean, my parents were really looking forward to that, so I was glad we got to make time for it. We flew back, and it was so cool. Like, people were recognizing me on the way back to Des Moines. And like, we were I think it was Atlanta airport, and this family came up and like, we watched you on Good Morning America the other day. Like, that's really cool. And I had the sign with me for carry on because I didn't know what else to do with it. So I had this sign, and it traveled with me everywhere. And right now it's underneath my guest bedroom bed for storage. So I had that with me, and they're like, we saw that, like, that's so cool. And all this fun stuff. We got back to Des Moines, and I was just exhausted, but we had some more radio interviews to do that night. So we did those. And then we hit $1 million total, which was just out of this world. I never thought in my wildest dreams that we would have started something so major off of something so insignificant. It was really cool. And we actually got some phone calls from people in Brazil, the Philippines, Australia, Japan, and just all over the place. And they had heard about it and they were sharing it. And then people from overseas were trying to find ways to donate. And Venmo at the time is just a US company. You couldn't do it in Canada or anything like that. So they were sending directly to the hospital. And so it just kind of sparked this influx of, helping these kids out. At that point, we were at $1.14 million. I got a text from a reporter with the Register. He said, hey, I found some tweets from you from, 2015, 2016. It was obviously you're quoting Tosh. They're kind of offensive jokes. What do you think? And I obviously had no idea. I, retweeted Tosh on that and looked and was like, oh yeah, those are not funny at all. They're stupid jokes. Obviously I was, an immature kid, I was just trying to edgy humor thing. It didn't work. And then I got to thinking about it after we got to talking. I was like, there's a chance to kind of own up to what I did, because people make mistakes all the time. Obviously, I make mistakes all the time. So I'll just tell people what's going on and, let them know. So I got together with some media people and I did a little release thing about, what had been going on, what we were doing, and, about the tweets and everything. And they were offensive. And it was crazy because I just thought being forward with what was going on was the right thing to do. I didn't think it would spark this crazy thing. I didn't think it was a big deal at the time, as far as a press release. And then it just added a new element to it over, I had heard the term cancel culture for the first time, and people were like, well, ethically, what's this? And, it sparked this own kind of self-reflection, and people are like, obviously when you're a kid, you make mistakes and you move forward. A side note on this, I actually get to go to schools, high schools, middle schools, and businesses, and I speak for them as well. And I kind of bring up this little, analogy that when you're growing up and you're learning to walk, or your brother and sister are learning to walk, if they're trying to walk and they fall, everyone applauds them because they're trying their hardest. And, even though they failed, they're uplifting them because it's the growing process. But after a certain point, you get to a situation where, trying and failing is not good enough. It's the end result is what people look for. And I think that's strange that even though you're continually working, you're continually trying, that failure is what people focus on. And it's just strange to me. But so I did this press release and I told them about what was going on. And obviously that kind of put this new spin, this new rift in everything that was happening. So people were like, well, I had made mistakes in my past, or thank God I didn't have social media when I was younger and all this stuff. And that just kind of plays into the power of social media. When I was that age in high school, it was me and like I had 27 followers on Twitter, and it was just me and my friends, and all we did was just we shared jokes with each other, and that's just kind of how we kept up with each other when we weren't at school. We just kind of shared things on our Twitter. And now social media is this completely other, it's this new giant that you come across. Everything revolves around social media, whether that be marketing, recruitment, everything. Um, Another little cool thing I bring up when I'm talking with high schoolers is that Snapchat is a social media, and that stuff can be saved and that can be permanent. People with the right tools can hack that and look at your snaps. And that just blows their mind because they think that's terrifying because a lot of really dangerous stuff happens on Snapchat. Um, we talk about, when you're applying for colleges, applying for jobs, social media is so important. You go back and you look at this person for whatever position it is, and you see, okay, do I think they'll get along with our current staff? Are they going to be a good fit for our institution? Are they going to be, the right person for the job? And a lot of people don't realize that when they're younger. It's very strange. I mean, you always hear about the power and presence of social media, and you're always told, watch what you do, watch what you say, and you just like, yeah, it's, I get it. And then you don't actually take that into full, cognition. You don't really lock that in. So what happened was a lot of people looked at themselves and they looked at other similar incidents and things like that. And they're like, it's strange that we're, jumping at this kid's throat for tweets from when he was 15 years old, quoting a comedian, to he's a 24-year-old adult with, a full-time job, and he's raising funds for sick kids. And a lot of people kind of got behind it and supported it. And instead of, canceling or, just everything stops and I lose everything, they got behind it. Bush did cut their ties because of it. Obvious business decision. I mean, I wasn't in it for the marketing stuff with Bush anyway, but they had pledged to make beer cans with my face on it and all kinds of cool stuff. And they stopped doing that, but they did still match the donations. Venmo they stayed right with us the entire time. It was really neat. And then it sparked this extra essence of giving in people. So at the time we were at 1.14 million. Within a couple days, we were at 2 million. And then, I mean, by the end of the week, we raised over $2 million total after this thing because people were just so upset that this is happening. So it was very, very weird to watch. I mean, I obviously didn't think I'd be in any type of position where I'd be someone on like have any type of influence on social media. I didn't think I'd have any type of pull with anyone. And then here's all these people. Now I have like 25,000 followers on Twitter, and I have all these kids that are looking up to me, and it puts you in this completely different position. At the very end of it, we had raised over $3 million. So that was incredible. This all started with this $1.19 poster board and just this thought of this might be kind of funny. Some people might get a kick out of this. And it turned into $3 million to help kids fighting for their lives at the Stead Family Children's Hospital. The day of the donation, I got to go and tour the hospital. We got to meet some of the kids and some of the families that were there. I got to meet some of the staff. I got to meet Dr. McNamara, who's their neonatal surgeon. He's the number 2 ranked neonatal surgeon in the world. He's in charge of like their pediatric type stuff. And it's unreal the things they can do. There was a stat that came out not too long ago that the Stead Family Children's Hospital, with their premature babies, they're able to save 70% of babies born at 22 to 26 months gestation, which is very, very small. That's like the size of a pop can. They're able to save 70% of them. And the rest of the country, that's 9%. They only able to save 9%. So they're incredible at what they do. I got to meet some different kids that were fighting, in the cancer and all this different stuff. And there's this little dude named Eli, and he thought this fundraiser was the coolest thing. He's like, "Oh, they're raising money for me and my family." And he got a golden doodle, and he named it King after me, which that was really cool for me. Um, it was just, completely grassroots, random, and powerful. It was so true and pure in its intention that it just really sparked something in a lot of people. And it sparked a lot of in the younger generation, which there was this kid from Bondurant. He dressed as me for Halloween. He held up a sign and asked for his root beer supply to be replenished, and he set up a Venmo account. And instead of getting candy, he wanted donations to his Venmo so he could send to the children's hospital for Halloween. And Sam, the man, he raised $17,000 over a couple weeks to go to the Stead Family Children's Hospital. And there's all kinds of different stories about, kids and families just doing their own little fundraisers, and the community's just jumping on board because they see a good cause and they want to help it. There's some kids that do lemonade stands every year in Des Moines and Altoona, and they raise those funds for the Kids Cancer Connection or different hospitals or veterans and all this cool stuff. It's really, it restores your faith in humanity when you actually think about it, because there's so many people that just want to help. And they might not have these crazy amounts of funds, they might not have thousands and thousands of dollars to give away, but the new spin on the Venmo donation and small, everyone can make a difference, it really resonated with a lot of people. Because the Venmo that we did, we had over 35,000 people donate from all 50 states and some territories in the U.S. Those amounts ranged from anywhere from 5 cents to like $1,900 through Venmo, and it was just anyone that could help and it was really cool. It taught me a lot of lessons for sure, like social media, the power and presence of it, and how it's very, very important, and it sticks around for a long time. People don't understand how powerful their digital footprint can be, because these things are archived, whether you realize it or not. Like I couldn't go back that far in scrolling. Like it cuts off on Twitter after 4 years. You actually have to do advanced searches to find anything back that far. Um, it sticks around for a long time, and a lot of people don't realize that. And social media can be a very useful tool. Obviously, with our whole thing was driven by social media, but at the same time, it can be very harmful, and it can make your life very public. um, it taught me that small acts of kindness can really spark from just nothing. And it doesn't have to be raising money. It can be anything, like whether that be someone holding a door for someone, like that could change the trajectory of their entire day. It's just, wow, that person's smiling, or that, it just helps. And when people are nicer to each other, it's just, the world's a better place. Um, it taught me the power of help and how much people want to contribute and make change and make a difference in the world. It just, so many people had the access and had the ability to help, and they did because they saw a good cause and they wanted to jump on it. It was really heartwarming. On the day of the donation, which was actually October 11th of last year, I got asked, what's next for Carson? What are you doing next? I didn't know. I was just planning on going back to work and doing my, normal thing. I was a supervisor in the security department at Prairie Meadows, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some time off and catch up on sleep, and then go back to work. And then I got to thinking, this is kind of cool. I like doing this. This is really fun. It's cool to see people come together to support different causes. So I thought, what if I could start my own nonprofit? What if I could start my own charity? And I just kind of started making phone calls and asking, and I found an accountant and a tax attorney and all this fun stuff, and they were able to help me set up my own nonprofit charity. So on February of this year, it was Super Bowl Sunday, actually, keep the tie with football. I launched the Carson King Foundation, and what we do is we like to support families and kids that are going through times of need, support the communities to come together and help themselves, and help other organizations fundraise. So I have worked with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, MS Moments, which is for multiple sclerosis, Ronald McDonald House, I did a thing with them. I actually got a full-time job offer with the Barrett Bozen Foundation based out of Waukee, which is a children's charity. I was working with them and working on my own foundation. And we went around and we interviewed families that stay at the Ronald McDonald House. Which they're really cool. A lot of people don't know exactly what they do. They think, oh, I get pop tabs and I send it to these guys and it helps them raise money. Yeah, but they give families a place to stay when their kids are getting life-saving treatment at these hospitals. They don't have to worry about, paying rent or food or anything like that. They're right there and they don't have to worry about commuting back and forth. They're right down the road from their kids. And there's a new one that opened up in Mercy and it's right below the NICU. The parents literally just hop on the elevator and within a minute, they're at their kid's bedside. And the weight that is just lifted off their shoulders because of that, it's so crazy. Um, we got to pick where our funds went with my foundation and with the funds that were raised for the Stead Family Children's Hospital, and one of those was the child life specialist. When we talked about getting their minds off things, the child life specialist, they take the kids and make them feel like normal kids. They do crafts, they do art, they do baking, all this fun stuff, and it gives the parents a chance to sit back and catch their breath and go on a walk or take a shower, take a nap, and not have to worry about their kids for a minute. And that's so good for the parents because I am not a father. I'm 25. I have a nephew and I have one more nephew coming, and they mean the world to me. I couldn't imagine being a parent of a kid that's terminally ill or in critical condition, and just the stress that puts on you because you have to be so strong for them, and they look at you for their own comfort, and you have to put on this face and be supportive and be strong of them the entire time when it's tearing you up. That just gives parents a chance to kind of decompress a little bit and relax and take their mind off it for a bit. When I talked about the NICU and the life-saving equipment, we sent funds to their transportation units to get kids access to go to the Stead Family Children's Hospital, especially premature babies. They have one unit that's 24/7. They have teams, and it's basically a mobile NICU. And they go to these hospitals that aren't well equipped or go all over the state, and they bring these kids in to give them a fighting chance to survive. With our foundation, we were able to kind of just see a need and fill a need. And with what I've learned and the people I've met, we've made some really cool connections. And we have our hand on the heartbeat, basically, of what the community needs. And it's really sweet. During the first stages of the lockdown with COVID, people didn't have their physical outlets. They didn't have all these different things to go to. They couldn't go out with their friends. They couldn't go to the gym. They couldn't do all these normal things that just kind of take the daily stresses off. So we thought, this might be kind of detrimental to people's mental health. So we decided to do a t-shirt fundraiser and raise funds for mental health services around the state that were making an effort to adapt and change and help people that needed it in their communities. We worked with Iowa Love, which is a t-shirt company based out of Waterloo. My friend William runs that. And we did Carson King Foundation edition Iowa Love shirts. Those shirts raised over $40,000 in our first fundraiser, which was unreal. We divided that up between the Waubonsee Mental Health Resource Center in Clarinda, Iowa, which is actually where I was born, in Clarinda. We sent to NAMI of Central Iowa and Please Pass the Love, both based out of Des Moines. And we sent to the Blackhawk Grundy Mental Health Center in Blackhawk Grundy County. That was really cool because that was our first, initiation into, fundraising and helping our communities and finding the needs of what needs to be met and what might not be, the best suited to support themselves at the time. Our next step was just kind of building. We had event planning, and obviously we couldn't really hold any in-person events, which really sucked. But at the same time, there's other people that are way worse off than that. My foundation is completely volunteer. We don't have anyone on payroll and probably not going to. I just cover like our website and stuff out of my own pocket, which, I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to work 2 jobs through this entire thing. So we can afford that. I have 4 board members and myself, and, we just kind of go out and we see a need, fill a need. The next one that popped up was the DeRay Show. Obviously that swept through and did, millions of dollars worth of damage to, farms and families and businesses across the state and in Iowa and in Illinois. And we thought, these these guys are hurting. There's a lot of people like in Marshalltown, they were still recovering from the tornadoes that went through. And, a lot of them still didn't have their new roofs yet, or, they were still trying to just raise enough money to pay for repairs. So we did an Iowa Strong shirt. Um, Iowa Strong is kind of a term that we really embody in the state of Iowa. It's, if there's something that happens and our communities need each other, they all just rally around each other. And just seeing the amount of people that were going out and they were donating their own time, their own resources to really support each other and rebuild and, clean up after the storms, it was really touching. We kind of wanted a t-shirt to kind of, commemorate that and raise more funds. So we did Iowa Strong shirts with Iowa Love Again, and we raised $60,000 within the first, 72 hours of that, which was just unreal. We sent those to United Way. They sent dedicated storm relief funds, which were really cool. They don't take any admin fees out, which is huge for where we send our donations. We don't want admin fees taken out because we want to impact the most people possible. United Way, the Marshalltown Community Foundation, just all kinds of cool organizations. With this, we have about $10,000 left from that fundraiser that we're going to just divide up and send to food pantries around the state, especially getting close to now where, it is holiday season. It's, Thanksgiving. We want to make sure the food pantries are taken care of so that they can support the people that need it the most. And it's kind of sparked this little, this way to be creative with the derecho and with everything that's happening with COVID. It's, everyone has to be a lot more creative when it comes to fundraising and, community outreach type stuff. So a lot of things have been going virtual, and, golf outings got really big because you could socially distance while you're golfing. And let's be real, who doesn't love to golf? And then we kind of had an idea during the original fundraiser for the hospital. It was Genesee Brewing Company. Once Bush decided they weren't going to make any, Iowa Legend beers, Geneseo Brewing, they said, well, we're going to do it then. And they sold Iowa Legend beers in Iowa and Illinois and sent all the proceeds to the Step Family Children's Hospital on top of that, which was just so cool. So I actually talked to the head brewer, Glenn Cole, who was out there, and he's now at Midwest Ale Works, and we talked about doing another charity beer. So now we're doing Midwest Legend, which is for storm relief for Iowa and Illinois and for farmers, small businesses, and families that were affected. And that's an open source one that literally any brewery in any state can pick up and brew as long as they send $1 from every pint to the foundation. And we divide that up, and we're going to find different organizations that are doing great things to help people that were affected. We actually have, I think there's like 10 right now that are brewing it. And one of them is in Virginia. So it's already kind of got a reach, which is crazy. And it's really cool to see the power and the positivity that people can have, and how people come together and how people can adapt to different situations and make a difference for their communities. I've kind of done my little spiel. I mean, I'm ready for Q&A if you guys are. So if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Okay, thanks, Carson. If anybody does have any questions, use the Q&A or the chat feature in Zoom. Does anybody have any questions for Carson? Like I said, you can use the Q&A or chat.
All right.
Carson, can you see these?
I can. All right. John asked, who would have won the Iowa State game this year? I think Iowa State would have won, but I may be biased. Thank you, Roger. Did you end up spending any money on beer? No, we didn't. So I actually was like, this is really cool. And just the whole premise of the fundraiser, we sent all of it. But there was a guy named Mike from Huxley. He actually he dropped off a pallet of beer in my house. So I was all set. I didn't need anything else.
All right. Any more questions from anybody?
What would be the single most significant lesson I've learned over this adventure? Um, there's a couple. I mean, the main one is the presence of social media and how powerful that is, both good and bad. I mean, it can really help you out and it can really hurt you. That's one that I've really taken to heart, as well as, you know, there's a lot of people that want to do good and help in this world. In Iowa, you're raised on these community values, and you're there to help out. Um, so taking that in consideration, you know, when you're doing stuff like, especially when I'm working with my foundation later on down the road, we want to be able to include everyone. You know, we don't want to just target people with massive amounts of money. You know, there's people that don't have a lot to give, but oftentimes they're the ones that want to give the most. So keeping things available for everyone when it comes to helping and, you know, volunteering and fundraising, that's another big one that I think that I've learned, is that there's just so many people out there that, you know, they want to help. um, Joe asked what's next. So I'm actually currently working for my brother's construction remodeling company, Iowa Legends, based out of Altoona. I'm doing that, and at the same time, I'm just working on my foundation. They actually, inside of their showroom, built an office for my foundation. So while I'm here working on the construction stuff, I can work on my own foundation, and that's really important because I'd really like to see the foundation get to a point where it can, you know, serve not only Iowa but Midwest, and, you know, if it's successful enough, really serve the country and just be an organization that people can reach out to for help. And I want to get to a point where we can, you know, provide a service and not just support those who do provide services. I'd love to see something about like a, you know, a medical bill repayment plan, or, you know, helping out with different things, and, you know, setting up fundraisers. And I'd really like to build us up to where we can bring in, you know, kids from high school and college that want to learn about the nonprofit world and learn about fundraising and event planning and help with, you know, charity. And I'd like to bring them on to set up and get work experience. I have no idea how that looks. I mean, I'm sure you guys have kind of picked up by now. I just kind of stumble into basically everything I do and just give it my all. And that's kind of the plan with this foundation. In the next 10 or 20 years, I'd like to see it to the point where we can possibly get people on a payroll and, you know, have help people full time. It's not just a see a need, fill a need. We build, and we're able to, you know, go out and support the Ronald McDonald House, support families and farmers that have been affected, and not have to do individual fundraisers for these causes. Just build up our own reserve and help from there. So if, you know, Timmy's family's hurting, you know, we can cut him a check for their electric bill, or help pay for groceries, or you know, temporary housing, or just anything that we can do. Um, I've also been pretty involved with a lot of different charity organizations and, you know, nonprofits, and I really want to learn more about them and get involved with them. I've actually just got on board with the Puppy Jake Foundation, which they provide trained service animals for veterans, you know, that are facing their own battles once they come back from serving our country. I'm pretty passionate about that one. And I do want to work with different organizations like public safety project. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity to build, you know, with public safety and community betterment, hold fundraisers with them and find different causes, you know, help with, you know, making better relations, doing anything like Altoona, you know, the National Night Out. That's the coolest thing in the world. I'd love to get involved with that and make it, you know, bigger than it already is, or just really anything. I mean, we don't really have a set direction we're going to go with the foundation yet, but I think with time, you know, we'll find our own our own way. And I think it's just going to take trial and, helping different causes and finding out all these ways that we can help and we can impact. That's just kind of what we're at right now. I'm sorry if I talk too fast sometimes. When I get really excited about something, I kind of speed up a little bit, and then it's my one flaw when I do public speaking. I've picked up on.
All right, does anybody else have any questions for Carson?
Thank you. What advice would I give to current leaders to be better leaders going forward? Just be open and honest. Just be a good person, honestly. Um, I feel like there's a lot of things that when people face criticism, instead of just directly, you know, coming forward about it and, addressing it, they kind of sidestep it and they twist it. And it's like, when you watch different like debates and stuff, like one of the weird things about that is like they'll kind of twist it so it fits their own thing. I think it's really important for community trust to just address it. Just be straightforward, be honest, and be completely open about whatever the situation is. Um, being in touch with the communities that you come from, and being in touch with what the current needs are, because thing about Iowa and with just really any situation is it's very fluid, and there's different needs that pop up, and after one thing's fixed there's always something else to work on. I think just addressing those as they come, one step at a time, and really listening to the people that need the most help and it really affects the most. I think that listening to those guys and addressing those guys and really helping out the ones that are the most impacted, that's that's the best advice I can give.